The idyllic villages that cling to our coastline. Known for their beauty and serenity.
Wow, look at this, just incredible.
Now destinations for our leisure.
This is like exploring a jungle.
But once they played a vital role in our history.
That's got to be the Lost Village. I'm Ben Robinson, and as an archaeologist, I'm fascinated by coastal villages. I want to explore them, discover their history, unearth some surprising things about their past.
I've come to Seaton Sluice on the rugged Northumberland coast, the least densely populated region of England. It's 13 miles from Newcastle and juts out into the North Sea. In the late 1700s, glass was vital for carrying liquids from drinks to medicine, and this tiny village became a giant in this profitable industry.
It wasn't called the Royal Bottle Works for nothing. It produced 1.74 million bottles a year.
It was all thanks to one family of entrepreneurs who were also the biggest party animals in the northeast.
One of the tricks was to turn a room upside down while you were sleeping. You would wake up in the morning and you would feel like you were on the ceiling.
There's a fascinating story to this village by the sea. Innovations in glass-making technology in the 1700s put Britain right at the forefront of the industry. And the northeast here was predominant in that industry. It had abundant supplies of coal to power the furnaces. And this little village of Seaton Sluice here on the coast was right at the heart of it all.
I'll discover how this industry changed the lives of the villagers and uncover the huge profits it made for the family behind it. The place named Seaton is Old English for settlement near the sea. It's a quiet place now with no obvious signs of its industrial history. But I'm on the hunt for any clues to that past.
Just getting my first look at the village here, and there's something that strikes me immediately. We've got the King's Arms pub there, 1764 it says on it, but the building behind that looks at least a century later. That's Victorian, and looking around I can see Albert Road, Queen's Road, terraces of Victorian and Edwardian housing. It implies that there was a massive redevelopment scheme here in the tail end of the 1800s into the early 20th century.
But there's a much earlier pub that's caught my eye.
Well, here's an interesting building. And looking at some of the details, the pediment above the door there, it looks like it belongs to the 1700s. And an intriguing name, Delaval. That's an old Norman name. If you're from round here, it's Delaval.
The Delaval family have been in Seaton since the Norman conquest. They owned the village and thousands of acres of surrounding land. And you can still find signs of how they got rich, if you know where to look.
Ah, I can see a lot of ash and what look like little lumps of coal.
The vast Delaval estate was rich in coal. Like much of the nobility then, They had investments in a company with connections to colonialism and historic slavery. But it was mining and trading coal that would provide great wealth in the 1700s. They built their family seat a mile from the village.
And this is their home, Seaton Delaval Hall. What a home it is. It's absolutely splendid. There was an earlier house here, but the Delavals had it completely remodelled, and they got in the master architect of the day, Sir John Vanbrugh. He designed Castle Howard, Blenheim Palace, and now they had him up here to build this.
Construction of this designer home began in 1718. It was a huge status symbol for the Delavals, declaring their rank to their trading partners and noble visitors.
The English Baroque was a style of architecture that was very, very important for 60 or 70 years, right at the end of the 1600s and into the 1700s. It's got elements of classical architecture here. There's that triangular pediment up there. There's the Doric columns. It wasn't just about the architecture. This is the expression of a whole way of life. The music, the drama, the art, everything. We were certainly buying into it here. It's a bit showy-offy as well.
Joe Moody, Cultural Heritage Curator at the Hall, has studied the lives of this fascinating family.
Well, this is just awesome.
This is a space like no other. We know it made a huge impression. We have writers who would walk in and describe this space and the space behind and the impact it made on them and the glorious views.
So who was living here?
So it was built by Admiral Delaval, but actually it's younger generations that became really associated with the place and really famous. There were 13 brothers and sisters. Not all of them made it to adulthood, but this really big family who became known as the Gay Delavals. Francis, the older brother, the heir, he was the ringleader, really in the fun and the games, certainly as they were growing up and as they were young adults. John, who also liked to party as much as the next person, but was also the sensible head. And then younger brothers like Tom. But Francis is the one who would really cement his reputation as the biggest, wildest party-goer and party-thrower, really, of his age.
So what could I expect if I came as a guest here in the 1700s?
The thrill, maybe the fear of coming here, would have been that you wouldn't know really what would happen. You knew it would be lavish, it would be expensive, it would involve a lot of alcohol. Francis really loved to play with people's expectations, I think. And so you wouldn't know until you were here what was really going to happen that night.
For the upper classes, the Georgian period was an era of decadence. They loved to party, dining on exotic food from across the empire. With a love of all things theatrical, they would stage pranks and japes at home for entertainment. At Seaton Hall, Francis Delaval turned this into an art form.
It could be anything from finding a duck in your bed when you go to bed that night, bed linen folded in such a way that you kind of can't get into the bed easily. One of the things that is said as a Francis special trick was apparently to turn a room upside down while you were sleeping. So you would wake up in the morning and you would feel like you were on the ceiling, looking down at the floor and wondering what on earth had gone on. And we don't know quite how Francis did that, but it has all the hallmarks of the kind of trickery and illusion that he really did enjoy.
I'm guessing that the partying couldn't go on forever. I mean, it has to be paid for, doesn't it?
Yeah, in the 1790s, he had a kind of a theatre night here, and he spent the equivalent of 400 days' wages of a normal person on one night of entertainment.
Just blown like that on a good time.
Yeah, and really that was to the despair of the family who, could see financial ruin coming. So through Acts of Parliament, John, the younger brother to Francis, incrementally took control of the estates, took control of the family businesses, the finance, and really, over time, developed a bit of an entrepreneurial flair, I suppose, as well.
More level-headed than his party-loving older brother, John had grand plans to export more coal from the Delaval's valuable mines. To do this, in 1761, he made a significant improvement to the harbour, an innovative feat of engineering that would boost the village's fortunes.
From here I can see the natural course of the old Seaton Burn there, the river running down, off, out through this narrow entrance to the sea. Now, it's been widened, it's been revetted, and it's a great little harbour here.
But the harbour would often silt up so big ships couldn't enter. John knew that if he wanted to increase trade, he'd have to make a dramatic change.
Here, something completely different is going on. This is just stupendous. A great cut has been gouged through solid rock straight out to the sea. It's the most incredible piece of excavation.
By creating this artificial cut, John completely changed how ships could enter the harbour. And by adding sluice gates to either end, he'd probably created the first wet dock in northeast England. Village historian Aidan Ridley has researched this ingenious piece of engineering.
This is quite a piece of work, isn't it?
Yes, it was about 900 feet in old measurement, 50 foot below us to the bed of the cut. It took 3 years to actually excavate it. It was principally with pickaxe.
Amazing.
And the operation of it was overlooked by Lord John throughout his life.
This John Delaval, he sounds like a very interesting character. He's not content to sit here and let nature take his course. He's going to develop the place.
He was a well-known person in the country. He was a member of Parliament for Berwick-upon-Tweed. He rose up the social and political ranks in this country.
So the sort of person that's going to drive progress forward.
And that's what he did. Yeah, this is it. This was his patch.
When John's Cut opened in 1764, it transformed the harbour. 40 ships a day could now sail in and load up, and Delaval profits soared. One record shows yearly exports from the harbour raised £24,000 in tax alone. That's around 6 million today. With such a huge amount of business to manage, the harbour master needed to keep watch at all times. So to make sure he never missed a trick, his headquarters were right in the middle of the action.
Well, this is a lovely little building. The core of it is an octagon, sometimes called a pepper pot. Oh, there's a date on it, 1720. And look up there, it's got battlements, it's crenellated, it's making a statement. Important things go on in here, important people live and work here. Of course, for such an old building, you can expect things have changed over time. Not only has it been extended slightly, but look, there's blocked entrances here. This is a doorway, a low doorway, maybe goes into some kind of cellar or basement, blocked up and disguised.
Rose Damaschio has owned the old harbour master's office since 2015.
What a fabulous building this is.
It was originally built by the Delaval family when the harbour was at its peak. This octagonal shape is due to the harbour master needing a good view around the harbour.
And he needed to see what was going on because he was
Yeah.
in charge of it all. He had to see all the comings and goings by land and sea because there's windows in every direction, isn't there?
His offices were up here. Downstairs was his family's living quarters, and they were totally separate. We're not sure if there were ever any stairs here. So the two areas were kept separate.
Now, I've seen blocked up openings downstairs, so that now makes sense. So they would have had, the family could have come and gone underneath, and all the business would have taken place up here.
There's another area that I'd love to take a look at, and Rose has kindly given me the go-ahead.
Oh. Oh, wow. Oh, what a view. This is absolutely wonderful. Get a real sense of the layout of the harbour here, and it's all the more impressive from above. I've got views way out to sea, right to the horizon there. Any boat traffic that's coming up and down the coast, easy to spot. Nothing would have moved around here without the harbour master seeing it, and he had to see it. He had to be on top of it all, and here you certainly are on top of it all. During the improvements to the harbour, another Delaval brother returned home from touring Europe. Now, Thomas was by all accounts a lively and intelligent man, and while he was visiting Germany, he'd come across a business idea that he really wanted to bring home: glass making.
In the 1700s, glass was in high demand as it was the easiest way to safely and cleanly transport liquids from wine to chemicals used in medical treatments. Glass was becoming cheaper to make, and as Thomas Delaval had many of the raw materials, such as sand and coal, in abundance, he built a bottle works here in a bid to increase the family fortunes further. Villager Paul Watson has looked into his ambitious scheme.
Thomas's family granted him 4.5 acres of land to build his dream, his vision, and the guy definitely ran with that vision and built this dream.
And what were the particular advantages of this place?
I would say it was the materials that were at hand, and also you've got the port, you have the harbour. It's perfect. All you need is a fleet of ships, and you're away. You could take your product to anywhere in Europe.
And we're not talking a hobby, a small artisan manufacturer. It's not decorative glass. This is serious business, mass production.
The Delavals were all about making money at the end of the day. This was not about just having a bit of fun, you know, making a few bottles and sailing a few ships. These guys were serious, serious people.
By 1764, the Royal Hartley Bottle Works was up and running. It had 24 employees and was turning out 10,000 bottles a month. By 1777, the factory was probably the largest bottle manufacturer in the whole of Britain, with more than 100 employees. Even though this impressive place has long since disappeared from the village, I'm keen to identify the site where it once stood.
I've got a wonderful historic map here. This is the early 1800s there. It shows the bottle works fully developed as far as I can see. And I've got the modern aerial view here as well. And I think we're somewhere in this corner, is that right?
That's correct. And on the actual map itself, we're here on this corner. There is some resemblances within the actual buildings that are still left.
Oh, it's kind of fossilised in the modern streetscape.
Yeah, they've kind of put the buildings in the same type of position.
Ah, OK. The thing that strikes me looking at this historic map is it's a massive complex.
That's correct.
There's terraces of cottages here, presumably for the workers.
That was another unique thing that the Delavals had done, actually. They provided basically everything that the workers needed was right here on the doorstep.
There's even a marketplace and brewery.
Brewery as well, yeah. Yeah. Must have been a brilliant atmosphere.
Yeah. On this map here, I can see 1, 2, 3 of these enormous glass cones.
That's right, 3, and eventually there would have been another 3 built as well.
At around 40 metres tall, the 6 cone-shaped furnaces dominated the skyline here.
Where we're standing right now, the glass cone would have been situated, and then you would have had the wagon way and a coal, some kind of coal hopper, which would have been situated in this area here.
Yeah. This, to me, is an enormous industrial complex.
Yes, it wasn't called the Royal Bottle Works for nothing. It produced 1.74 million bottles a year. Everything from Winchester half pints, champagne bottles, and obviously all the medical equipment as well that would have been produced here as well.
Yeah.
The bottle works was so big, locals called it the city. But today, apart from a few walls, you wouldn't know it had ever been there. Although you can still find clues to that past.
I
I've come down here to the shore of the Burn, and this is the sort of place where I'd expect to find things chucked out from the village. They would naturally gravitate down the slope. Anything you didn't want, broken bits of glass, rubbish, it'd all end up down here. And that's the stuff that archaeologists love. And just here, the Burn has eroded a bit of the bank away, and that means I get free section into these great heaps of rubbish, and I can see it's chock-a-block with glass and glass fragments. I'll just dig it out a bit, try not to bring the whole hillside down on me. Oh, look at that. Oh yes, a great chunky bottle, that is. The base of a great chunky bottle. This actually takes me back. It really does, because as a kid, one of the things I think that got me interested in archaeology was finding the sites of old houses. Of course, they didn't have refuse collection, so they'd just dump the house contents somewhere nearby. And if we could find that, then there's a chance that we could find bottles, and bottle hunting was a big thing. And oh, if you could find a whole bottle, that was the most precious thing. I've been scraping away here, so I've built up a nice little collection of fragments. I wonder if they really do come from the glassworks.
The recipe for Delaval glass was a fiercely guarded secret. But over 200 years later, material scientist Professor Caroline Jackson has cutting-edge technology to crack its code.
This is a portable X-ray fluorescence analyzer. It measures elements so we can tell what the composition of glass is.
Chemicals, trace elements, anything that's gone in accidentally and on purpose into the glass.
Absolutely. Glasses are made using silica, which comes from sand, and you also need an alkali, such as sodium or potassium, and these come in with wood ash to bracken to seaweed.
And you've got a piece of glass, so you've analysed that already?
Yes, and they're 99% sure that it came from the bottle works here.
Okay. What's its particular signature?
This glass has a lot of iron in it, which is causing the dark green colour. It also has traces of strontium, which is a good signature for the use of kelp or seaweed as an alkali.
I've got some bits and pieces here. Could you help me discover whether we have got some products from the bottle works?
I can do an analysis and see if it looks around the same composition. The X-rays scatter, so you need to be at least 2 metres away.
Right, so it's proper X-rays then?
It is proper X-rays. I'm wearing little finger rings which will measure if I get a dose.
Really?
Okay.
Retire a safe distance.
I'll stand up to do this. It's counting up now, so it's measuring the different elements. Yep, we're there. Okay, if you'd like to come and have a look at the results. These are elemental values. So what we've got here, we've got aluminium, silica. The silica's looking about right. It's very low potassium.
If you were betting on it, would you say it's likely that these come from the same bottle works?
The compositions look right for bottle glass, right for this period, and right for the raw materials that we know were being used here.
Locals such as Tom Newstead have been finding bottles of all types around the village for generations. And it's become a bit of a tradition to give them to the pub.
These are bottles that are left by villagers if they born local people.
So there's all sorts, there's sort of little medicine and ointment bottles and all that sort of thing, but they all look a bit later than Thomas's time. These don't look like they're from the 1700s, they look like sort of later 1800s, early 20th century, some of them, don't they?
I think we've got to remember that this was operational for about just over 100 years, so that's still within the time period and the site.
So something like this, maybe, that's worth testing?
Yes, I think we could have a look at that.
OK, and what have we got here? What do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, that looks the right colour. OK, so if you could move back again now. Okay, if you'd like to come and have a look, we'll have a look at these together. When we look at the results, we've got very little alkali in the form of potassium, so it's unlikely this is from the site.
It's definitely not from Seaton Sluice bottle works.
It doesn't look as if it is.
Well, what about this one though?
Calcium is at the right concentration, same as before. Low potassium, which is what we found in the other sample.
You actually think that might have been made here?
This is probably a late example, probably was made here.
Well, that'll be good news for the village, anyhow.
Yeah.
You found the bottle here.
Good.
Thank you.
Although the bottle works was Thomas Delaval's pet project, he over-invested in it, and his older, more sensible brother John had to bail him out. Thomas sold him the company in return for an annual allowance and a very junior position in the business. But there was trouble brewing for John as well.
John is sitting pretty at this point. He's in control. He has the industries, he has the hall. He's just been made a baron. But there's a sad end to this tale, and it's told by a building somewhere in this woodland. This is like exploring a jungle and coming across a ruined Aztec temple or something like that. But this building actually dates from the late 1700s. It's a mausoleum. And up and down the country, the great families would build these as repositories for their dead, monuments to a whole dynasty. This is in ruins. I wonder why. This mausoleum was built by Sir John Delaval as a memorial to his son, Jack. And it says the last male heir of the Delavals. And Jack's demise is described here. It says he was down in Bristol being treated for consumption at the hot springs there. And Jack died. But the Bishop of Durham demanded too high a fee to come and consecrate this building for burial. So no one ever was buried here. But in any case, that marked a real change in the fortunes of the family.
The Delaval estate was passed to John's nephew, Sir Jacob Astley, in the early 1800s. He already had a large seat in Norfolk, and he rarely visited the increasingly dated hall. The harbour too went into rapid decline as coal ceased to trade here. And Seaton Sluice's glass industry was also in peril.
By 1871, new methods in glass manufacture meant that this bottle works was no longer efficient. It had made bottles in all shapes and sizes in vast quantities that had served the entire nation. But now it was redundant. The Victorians swept it away and began replanning and redeveloping the village that we see today. But for me, this place will always be linked to those enterprising Georgians, John, Francis and Thomas.